The variety of living organisms here on Earth, such as plants, animals, microbes, and fungi, is referred to as biodiversity. Over generations, all of the species that are currently alive today have evolved unique traits that makes them distinct from one another. The Earth's biodiversity is so diverse that many species are still undiscovered, but rather because of human actions, many of them are facing extinction, endangering the Earth's exquisite biodiversity. Indeed, this jeopardy is mainly triggered from human consumption and the way we treat nature, leading to the disturbance of numerous ecosystems. Such threats are known to be pollution, climate change, and even population growth. However, it can be stated that pollution has become the most prevalent one in terms of being the problem that the human race is having a hard time fixing. Looking back, water has always been one of the most essential matters here on Earth. Given that humans need this in order to survive, its contamination would put everyone at risk. However, if we look around, we can see pieces of trash floating around different bodies of water. Water bodies including rivers, lakes, seas, and even oceans become contaminated when hazardous chemicals and microorganisms get into waterways. As a result, the water quality declines and turns harmful for both humans and the environment. In reality, how serious is water pollution? In the Philippines, 3 million people utilize contaminated water sources every day, endangering their lives. In addition to this, 7 million more people lack access to better sanitation and its services. Moreover, besides being a great threat to humans, this also makes the concept of species extinction rise. Now, seeing the floating contaminants on water makes everyone worry for themselves and our marine life. This problem indeed sparks other environmental issues that become harder to compensate later on. Definitely, certain rehabilitations are being executed to alleviate the suffering of our biodiversity. Change starts within you. Hence, starting off with awareness is great and crucial. However, ending with it only is meaningless, as actions are always needed in order to change something. In this video, we shall show you the severity of water pollution, the possible solutions for it, and its impact, not just on us humans, but also towards the environment and other living organisms.
A threat that negatively affects biodiversity, or aquatic biodiversity to be more specific, is water pollution.
So what is water pollution? When harmful substances, often chemicals or microorganisms, contaminate a stream, river, lake, ocean, aquifer, or other bodies of water, their quality deteriorates and they become toxic for both humans and the environment. Water pollution not only jeopardizes our health as human beings, but also to animals living in the sea. Substances that are easily dissolved by water and are toxic to water bodies are called emerging contaminants. Emerging contaminants refers to harmful substances, often chemicals or microorganisms, that contaminate a stream, river, lake, ocean, aquifer, or other types of bodies. Some examples of emerging contaminants include plant hormones, flame retardants, fragrances, and pesticides. What do these emerging contaminants all have in common? Well, most of these emerging contaminants are chemical-based products that we use every day. These chemicals eventually find their way to bodies of water, where they collectively pollute the water. Some of these chemicals can harm aquatic life, as they can have some irreversible damage on their systems.
An example of one of these chemicals is called endocrine disrupting chemicals, also known as EDCs. Endocrine system. The endocrine system is an intricate system of glands and organs. An animal or a human body's metabolism, energy level, reproduction, growth and development, and response to injury, stress, and mood are all regulated and coordinated by hormones.
Take note that the endocrine system is responsible for sexual functions, as it regulates the release of sexual hormones in the bloodstream. Now that we have defined our endocrine system, let us now move on to EDCs.
Endocrine disrupting chemicals, or EDCs for short, is a chemical that are thought to interfere with the body's hormonal and developmental processes in humans, animals, and aquatic environments by mimicking or blocking hormones. Since the endocrine system plays a vital role in an organism's reproduction, we can imagine that a chemical such as EDCs, which are known to interfere with these processes, can halt or slow down these reproductive processes. Emerging contaminants such as EDCs are easily dissolved by water. But what about those pollutants that are not easily dissolved by water? Although water is known as the universal solvent, there are many synthetic materials which it cannot dissolve. An example of this would be plastics. When plastics enter huge bodies of water such as the ocean, its quality degrades due to salt water and UV light. This causes the plastic to be brittle and very susceptible to fragmenting into small microplastics. Microplastics are another main cause of water pollution, as harmful chemicals can bind on these microplastics, thus making the water polluted. Microplastics are often hardly seen by the naked eye as they are very small and transparent. Water treatment facilities have a hard time removing microplastics. This means that there is a possibility that you might be drinking a few microplastics as we speak.
The microplastics may reduce food intake, delay growth, result in oxidative damage, and cause abnormal behavior in fish and other aquatic life. Microplastics, due to their small particle sizes, make them easily consumable, and they are widely distributed in marine environment.
Indeed, the damage caused by microplastics is severe in terms of the overall health of the aquatic ecosystem and how it manifests to higher life forms, such as the ones higher in the food pyramid that eventually affects us. As you can see from the film from Netflix's A Plastic Ocean, plastics pollute the Earth's blue waters, even down to the micro level. What we see plainly in what seems to be clear waters contains plastics, polluting our waters and ultimately poisoning the health of the aquatic ecosystems and the general welfare of the people. Besides the apparent physical contamination, chemical contamination changes the overall water quality, may it be from its nutrient levels, acidity, toxicity, and other factors.
What is contamination? Basically, contamination is equivalent to pollution, where harm is done on a large scale directly to humans or the environment, which is essential for human activities. There are many ways in which contaminants can contaminate the marine environment with various causes. Usually, they originate from land-based activities, but sometimes they come from or are redistributed by the marine cycle itself.
So what's the main difference between contamination and pollution, despite having a somewhat similar definition to each other? Well, contamination is the presence of a substance that is not native to the area, while pollution is when the contaminant harms organisms and disrupts the ecosystem.
What is eutrophication? Eutrophication is a process that happens when water becomes oversaturated with nutrients and minerals that can cause excessive growth of aquatic plants and algae. It indicates a condition of nutrient richness in a given area, specifically the oversaturation of nitrates and phosphates.
What does the process of eutrophication mean for the environment? Well, since it's most often associated with and is a direct indicator of excessive growth of flora in the environment, it could mean that the water system could be deprived of oxygen due to the excess of biodegradation of dead organisms. So what happens is that nitrate and phosphate are first washed up into the natural water system, causing an overconcentration of nutrients. Those nutrients serves as the food for the algae, then eventually accumulates into a thick algal bloom in the water called algal blooms. And the denser the algal bloom gets, the lesser sunlight can pass through, making the seafloor flora unable to photosynthesize and produce oxygen. With this, microorganisms such as bacteria, protozoa, and such flourish, and so does the rising consumption of dissolved oxygen. Ultimately, the water becomes anoxic, which is water without oxygen, and all macroorganisms such as fish will likely die under the lack of oxygen and sufficient nutrients.
We could see recent examples of eutrophication impacts include toxic algal blooms at the trophic Lake Taihu in China and along the shores of Lake Erie on the border of USA/Canada, which cuts off water supplies from thousands to millions of people. People in Brazil in 1996 were killed due to toxins from a eutrophic reservoir. It costs a loss of billions of dollars for European and American coastal waters for eutrophic waters to be treated.
The fact that eutrophication can cause an oversaturation of nutrients in the water, making it anoxic in the long run, signalizes a hazardous process if not handled well and monitored constantly. If such problem runs amok, it can bring higher fish mortality, increased water toxicity, and the loss of local marine and terrestrial ecosystems.
Through the years, we can see how mankind's evolution to technology has expanded. However, with great progression must come with great responsibility. It is also evident to us today how slowly our natural resources are dying or being destroyed, and one of which is our waters.
The main cause of this is the intervention of humans. Once the waste products are thrown near bodies of water, the chemical substances and contaminants slowly spread through waterways. Illegal dumping of waste products continues to rise. In the United States alone, we have 1.5 million tons of illegally disposed waste yearly.
First, let us focus on the environmental sector. So we know that all species depend on water to survive or live. Scientifically speaking, one can survive without food for 5 days. However, one cannot survive that long without water. 70% of our bodies is composed of water. And the fact that we consume water, it should be properly processed or filtered, because if not, it will negatively affect us in every way. The presence of pollution in water can cause a disruption in the species' life cycle and affect the ecosystem as a whole. The second area affected is our economy. So we know that one of the major contributors to economic growth is tourism, trading, natural resources, and labor. The growth and decline of the economy is also affected by the presence of water pollution, given that its impact to society affects all the major contributors that I've mentioned before to the economy. Lastly is the health sector. We know that water consumption is important in the daily lives of all species. With this, according to the World Health Organization, water pollution causes more death a year than from violent events such as wars. Through this, we can see how essential water is in our daily lives, and there are many issues surrounding water pollution as well, such as water scarcity, the lack of access to clean, fresh, and drinking water. All of these become a domino effect and would slowly destroy not just us but our planet.
All life on Earth is supported by biological diversity, which includes biological variation in all of its manifestations, from cultural diversity to genetic makeup. And on the other hand, biodiversity loss is the decline of biological diversity, or as the extinction of all life on Earth. Recent years have seen an alarming decline in biodiversity, primarily because of human activities. Let's discuss the two major causes for loss of biodiversity. Different aspects of biodiversity are significantly impacted by climate change. The intensification and recurrence of fires, storms, and drought are two key consequences of climate change on biodiversity. Additionally, higher global temperatures have the ability to change ecosystems over longer periods of time by influencing what can grow and dwell within them. The UNDP recognizes invasive alien species as the second leading global cause of biodiversity loss. Invasive alien species engage in predatory behavior, engage in food competition, cross-pollinate with local species, introduce parasites and illness, and etc.,
which impacts biodiversity. Loss of biodiversity has numerous negative effects not just on the environment but on people's physical and economical well-being. Human health depends largely upon ecosystem services and goods which are necessary for good public health and prosperous lifestyles, such as the availability of clean water, food, and fuel. If ecological services are no longer sufficient to fulfill necessities, the loss of biodiversity has negative direct effect on human health. We can no longer destroy the diversity of life. It is our responsibility to future generations, Audrey Azoulay said, Director General of UNESCO. UN Sustainable Goals such as SDG 14 and 15 can help us slow down the decline of biodiversity. SDG 14 intends to regulate fishing while encouraging sustainable fisheries, alleviate the consequences of acidification of the oceans, and sustainably manage and safeguard marine, coastal, terrestrial, and inland freshwater ecosystems. SDG 15 aims to prevent and rectify land degradation, combat desertification, restore and boost the sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, and end biodiversity loss. Beyond UN obligations, every one of us may contribute to the battle against biodiversity loss. By giving priority to sustainable food and mobility, by decreasing small-scale pollution, encouraging responsible consumption, promoting environmental education, and finally, supporting any activity that aims to maintain biodiversity.
To further elucidate the discourse about water pollution, let me present to you the most prominent environmental accidents on water. This phenomenon sparked for many of the 20th century environmental protection regulations, including the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency founded in 1970. Silent Spring is an environmental science book by Rachel Carson. Published on September 27, 1962, the book documented the environmental harm caused by the indiscriminate use of pesticides. Carson accused the chemical industry of spreading disinformation and public officials of accepting the industry's marketing claims unquestioningly. After outlining the major families of pesticides in use, she breaks down the effects of these pesticides into their component parts, examining different sections of the natural world, from the water to the soil, and from plants to bird life. She showed that pesticides are much deadlier than their manufacturers will admit, and that within nature they will accumulate and interact to create effects that are difficult to foresee. She argues that not only are pesticides dangerous to the environment and humans, but that they also have not in fact succeeded in their mission. Pests often rebound massively after spraying once nature's built-in system of checks and balances has been disrupted. Next is the Love Canal. Love Canal is a neighborhood in Niagara Falls, New York, United States that became the site of an enormous environmental disaster in the 1970s. The Love Canal area was originally the site of an abandoned canal that became a dumping ground for nearly 22,000 tons of chemical in the 1940s and 50s. In the following years, the site was filled in and given by the company to the growing city of Niagara Falls, which allowed housing to be built on it. In 1978, however, state officials detected the leakage of toxic chemicals from underground into the basements of homes in the area. Subsequent investigations established an abnormally high incidence of chromosomal damage among the area's residents, presumably caused by their long-term exposure to the chemical wastes. Much of Love Canal was then evacuated to abandoned land being purchased by the state of New York. The canal was capped and fenced off and the buildings around it were raised. On May 1, 1956, a doctor in Japan reported an epidemic of an unknown disease of the central nervous system, marking the official discovery of Minamata disease. In the late 1950s, Minamata Bay, Japan became contaminated with mercury from a nearby factory manufacturing the chemical acetaldehyde. The mercury was biotransformed by bacteria in the water into methyl mercury or organic mercury that bioaccumulated and biomagnified in the muscle of fish. First, local cats that ate the fish began to stagger about and die. Then the local population of people that depended on fish were affected, particularly developing fetuses and children. Over 2,000 people died and thousands more experienced crippling injuries. Last was the Great Stink. The Great Stink was an event in central London during July and August 1858, in which the hot weather exacerbated the smell of untreated human waste and industrial sewage that was present on the banks of the River of Thames. The problem had been mounting for some years, with an aging and inadequate sewer system that emptied directly into the Thames. The foul air from the sewage was thought to transmit contagious diseases, and 3 outbreaks of cholera before the Great Stink were blamed on the ongoing problems with the river.
Humans use a lot of water. We need it for various activities, including agriculture, transport, washing, and recreation. Most importantly, we need to drink fresh water to stay alive. Today, in many regions around the world, fresh water came straight to where we need it. But in some places, people must carry gallons of water from the closest stream, river, lake, or well to their homes.
Despite the fact that water covers about 71% of the Earth's surface, one of the main problems we face today is water pollution. We have to reduce water pollution, and that's why there are many solutions to solve this problem.
All types of pollution, including water pollution, is growing day by day. It's time to prevent water pollution by making combined effort by all of us. How to prevent water pollution is a common question when someone wants to reduce water pollution. The best way to prevent large-scale water pollution is to try and reduce its harmful effects. There are numerous small changes we can make to protect ourselves from future where water is scarce. And there are many ways that we can stop, at least reduce and prevent water pollution. We can reduce the amount of plastic used or recycle and reuse plastics correctly. Dispose of waste properly using services such as a dumpster rental, proper waste services for your home, and business waste services. If you have a dog or any pet that you can go outdoors, make sure you can clean up after them, especially after they poop. If you have a yard, consider landscaping that reduces runoff and avoid applying pesticides and herbicides. Be sure to properly dispose of any yard waste. Dispose of chemical cleaners, oils, and non-biodegradable items correctly to make sure they don't end up in places they don't belong, like our waters. Regularly check up on your car and take it to get serviced regularly so it doesn't leak oil, antifreeze, or coolant. Lastly, you can vote candidates in local election likely to have position in water quality and other environmental. So, make the green choice that will help your area improve its environmental impact during your next election.
For us humans, water is not simply a vital need for our bodies. It is also a resource from benefit from every day. At home, we use it for cooking, cleaning, washing, and flushing. Our food, clothes, mobile phones, cars, and books all use in water their production. We use water to build our homes, schools, roads, and to heat buildings and cool power plants. With electricity we generate from its movement, we light our cities and our homes. In other words, a world without water would make the human race impossible to last. The same can be said for all animals and plants. In fact, the whole earth will suffer without water.
Save water. The whole world depends on you.
A day without water is hard, so don't let it become your future.